We'll talk about that.
It's quite poor. Hello, my name is Ian. This channel is all about music and art, and this is where we talk about music and art. And in this series of videos, we've been looking at what's been happening regarding music streaming in the UK. The UK government's Digital Culture, Media and Sports Committee have been looking into the ways that the streaming platforms and other large record companies manage payments to songwriters, musicians and performers. And on the 15th of October 2020, UK Parliament published a news article stating that the Digital Culture, Media and Sports Committee were going to inquire into the impact of the streaming on the future of the music industry. The article stated that the inquiry would consider whether the government should take action to protect the industry from piracy in the wake of steps taken by the EU on copyright and intellectual property rights. Now, I knew that there were some high-profile musicians and music industry types who were giving evidence to the committee. And the first of these meetings was on the 24th of November 2020, with another meeting on the 8th of December. Now, these were long meetings lasting over 3 hours. So what I've done is I've decided to edit them down into shorter videos, and the links to all the previous meeting videos are in the description down below. It's worth giving a background to the witnesses giving evidence in this second session of January the 19th, 2021. First, we have Tony Harlow, Chief Executive of Warner Music UK. Harlow has just taken over as Chief Executive as of this month, February 2021, and he joined WMG in 2010 as Managing Director of Australasia, where he grew a reputation for breaking talent early, artists such as Ed Sheeran and Dua Lipa. Most recently, he's been president of WEA, the Global Artist and Label Services arm of WMG. What a lot of acronyms. Where he helped transform operations and expand streaming-focused markets, as well as the oversee addition to direct-to-consumer expertise from Songkick, EMP and UPROXX. Don't quite know what that is, but he's well placed to look at this sort of stuff. Next, we have Jason Iley, Chairman and Chief Executive of Sony Music UK and Ireland. Iley is an MBE, former President of Rock Nation Records and the UK Chief of Mercury Records. He heads up all of Sony Music's activity in the UK and Ireland, overseeing Sony Music's frontline and imprint labels across the whole region, including the operations of Columbia Records, Epic, RCA, Serco, Commercial Group, Relentless, Insanity, Since 1993, Dream Life Records and Black Butter. It's a lot of record labels, isn't it? And lastly, we have David Joseph, who is the Chairman and Chief Executive of Universal Music Group and Ireland. Joseph joined the company in August 1998 as General Manager of the company's Polydor label, before moving up in February 2002 to become Managing Director and later Co-President of Polydor. In March 2008, he was promoted to Chairman and CEO of Universal Music UK, and since then he oversees their labels Ireland, Polydor, Capitol, Decca and EMI, as well as the world-famous recording studio, Abbey Road. All of the sessions for these committees were chaired by Julian Knight, and the complete list of committee members and the relevant links are in the description down below. This recording is made in agreement with the UK Parliament Terms and Conditions, which states I cannot alter the video and audio of the recording in any way. I can't use this material for satire or use it on a website or social media platform that promotes, encourages or facilitates illegal activity or encourages hatred and antisocial behaviour. So here is part 3 of session 2 from the 19th of January 2021 into the economics of music streaming.
John Nicholson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I start off with you, Mr. Joseph? A number of our witnesses, musicians, have told us privately and off the record that they're scared of you, not you specifically, but bosses, record company bosses like you, and they're too scared to speak in public. That must make you feel very ashamed. Mr. Joseph.
Sorry, I was on mute. I don't. I mean, I saw the statement that the chair issued, and absolutely not. From my point of view, that's not the relationship we have with any of our artists. Well,
if you're the person that does the scaring,
no,
you're not likely to be aware of it. At least I hope you're not aware of it. But it's a disturbing thing. You should feel this.
My job is to amplify the voices of our artists. That is my job. And
why don't they see it like that? Why don't the artists see it like that?
I've been speaking to artists 2 or 3 times a day, every single day since March. We're closer than ever. And it's not just me. Our teams, we've got huge teams who wake up, they care passionately.
Well, you may feel that, but that's not what so many of the artists feel. Why is there such a gulf between your understanding of the relationship and their feeling about what the relationship entails?
We really do have open and honest conversations at all levels. I really think
they're just too sensitive, are they?
No, the artists are all different. One thing I will say that they have in common is they're not wired to stay at home. I mean, and the amount of conversations we're having and creativity and how can we support that creativity while they're not touring. But I don't recognise that. I speak to artists all the time, our labels do, we're very welcoming. We have to understand artists are creatively empowered and in charge, and they don't have to do things if they don't want to do things.
Really? Well, okay, all right. Let's look at that now. As we've discovered, A&R is the money that goes into scouting and developing artists. What are your A&R costs as a proportion of your revenue?
Roughly in line with the market of 250 million in A&R, so somewhere between 20% just in A&R and then marketing, just in terms of signing new artists and keeping artists with us for long careers.
And the average royalty rate would be what? How much?
There are all different types of deals. So there can be deals that, and I'll come on to average, I will, but it's important I say a lot of deals at the moment with the competitive market are just distribution. A lot of them can be 80-20, some can be 50-50. If you're talking about an average advanced deal, which is 90% of deals, the artist wants the investment in them over a long period of time, average between 20 to 25% artist royalty.
Yeah, because it's the big stars that get 30%, isn't it? But the average royalty rate, I understand, is 22%. Now, what that means in practical terms is that a record would have to make 4.5 times the agreed recoupable cost for the artist to make any money at all. Isn't that the case?
If I may, it's not the case. So artists come to us, in terms of artists making money, artists often, and their team and lawyers and management ask for personal advances. They ask for advances to come all the way through the contract. I have to bring up, because it's so used by us, the artist royalty portal, where literally better than a banking app, you can see exactly what the current account and the money that you're getting. So they see all of that. Our artists seem to be very happy with the investment, very happy with advances for them. So it is a really...
They're not. I mean, they're really not. I think you're living in cloud cuckoo land here if you really believe that. I mean, we're not experts in this field. We're politicians, but our job is to sit and listen to people in the industry. You have a very unhappy industry, and artists are not happy. I'm sure the very rich artists are happy, but not the young ones. I'd like not to be accused of being out of touch. We signed 100 new artists last year. I deal with some of the biggest artists in the world. It's on that question, how much of your A&R budgets go to new or first album artists as a percentage?
Sorry, I missed. How many go to
new artists, first album artists?
A significant proportion of that 20%, there is, if I may, and it's not to appear anything, that it's a very competitive situation, so I can't share my exact A&R.
Really? We're not asking you to share. You keep returning to the sensitivity point, the commercial sensitivity. What the chair said earlier is spot on. We're not asking you to share sensitive figures. We're not asking you to tell us what the artists are being paid or detailed sensitive issues like that. I mean, what I was asking you was something that's quite easy for you to tell me out of thought without...
You're correct. By the way, I apologise if that seemed evasive. You're completely right. It's millions and millions of pounds in new... I mean, signing new artists is the lifeblood of our industry.
No, I'm talking about as a percentage. As a percentage, how much of your A&R budget goes to new or first album artists?
Roughly 40-50%.
Right. So a fair amount. And how many artists would you reckon are in royalty rates of 30% or more?
How many in percent? I think the answer is one I gave before. The majority are between 20 to 25. Large majority.
Oh, all right. Can I move on to Mr. Harlow, please, if I may? Is it true that in 2019, Warner's return on capital, more money went to passive investors than to developing musicians?
No, I don't think it is. If by passive investors you mean things like dividends, I don't think it is. In 2020, we spent globally about 1.15 billion on A&R around the world, and our dividends were about $280 million.
Well, interesting. That's not what the figures appear to show, because I have, in fact, the figures in front of me, and the year-end 30 September figures show that recorded income, this is page 51 of the report, 3,840 million, but A&R costs at 1,178 million. That means that more is spent on dividends than on A&R. It just seems a surprising priority.
I'm sorry, I don't recognise what report you're looking at. We do file all our reports because we're a public company, and the numbers I have in front of me are from our filings, and that is the way that is the balance. What I would say is, across our global organisation, consistently, and probably with the exception of around 2014, our investment is around 30 to 32%. And the difference between the numbers quoted by Mr. Joseph and us is what is on the operational P&L as opposed to what goes to bigger artists who we tend to write off the investments for. So
right. Well, we can probably drill down into the figures in the report, but the bottom line is, because you're paying out so much in dividends as a percentage rather than in AR and developing people, a lot of that money goes abroad, doesn't it? So you're actually taking money out of the country and out of this industry. It's not supporting the UK and UK musicians.
Well, as I just said to you, Mr. Nicholson, I think we have a very high R&D rate relative to other businesses. It's 30 to 32%, and that is a high R&D, and it's heavily focused in the UK, where we have artists as diverse as Ed Sheeran, Coldplay, Pink Floyd, Joel Corry. You know, I can go on and on naming British talent that we. All
right, sadly we don't have time to, because we're rushing to go to the Commons chamber for a statement on music. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Giles Watling.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and you also have Led Zeppelin, which I'm delighted about, and I do like an album.
We do.
Get it out, and you know which track comes next. Okay, very quickly, I'll be brief because I know we're short of time. So what proportion of artists in your repertoire, I think this is to Jason really, what proportion of artists in your repertoire, and others can come in, are upstreamed from independent or subsidiary labels? And what proportion are signed from social media as opposed to being scouted directly by your company?
Okay, Sony Music has a company called The Orchard, which distributes independent artists. Some of those relationships we will help work with the Yorkshire and support the marketing and vision with those labels. And in respect of social media, that from an A&R perspective, that's one of the avenues where our A&R teams try and find and sign artists. So it's the modern world is, years back you were limited to trying to have a record on radio or TV, and now there are so many different platforms to find artists. There's so many different platforms. Social media was so huge.
Do you have an idea of the proportion though between social media?
The actor we signed.
Yeah.
The actor we've signed from social, it'd be quite high, because you're look at the likes of TikTok at this moment in time. TikTok is enormous, and if I look at my top 20 records of the past year, especially artists signed from America, a big amount have come from TikTok. And I go back to the.
Sorry, Mr. Iley, how is that picture now changing? What direction of travel is there? Are you relying less on scouting directly, or are you signing directly from the social media platforms?
Well, as I mentioned earlier on, we still have an enormous investment in our A&R executives and in the different labels. I made the point earlier that we'd increased our labels from 6 to 15. So we. If I was to, can I reverse the question? If I was to close, if my boss said to me tomorrow, go from 400 to 40 people, 35 of those people will be A&R. We would keep those people because they are the source that find our artists. And the artists are the most important part of my life. Without the artists, there isn't any marketing, there isn't any press, there isn't any promo, there isn't anything else. I have monthly meetings with new starters, and I say, you could be the best marketing person in 10 years. You could be the next CEO in 15 years. But none of you are more important than the artist. And it's the A&R execs that find those artists. And they find them from a multitude of platforms, and incredibly more so from social media. So
thank you. And I would imagine the others are the same. David Joseph,
I'd like to add, it's a really excellent question. Scouting is often online, and obviously particularly during COVID, where we haven't been able to go and see concerts or everyone hang out together. It's been really interesting building these relationships with these new artists. So the answer I'd say is really simple. Is the majority of artists that we sign, I would say 98% already have their music somewhere between already on Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud. 99% already are on there, so we can find their music and talk about it. And during this time, most of them have been signed remotely. In terms of social, was one of the questions about social media accounts?
Yeah, social media as opposed to directly scouted.
In terms of social media, that's really the artist's choice. The majority of young artists have their own social media accounts to talk directly to their fans. But that's not something we get involved in.
And you as an industry tool. Sorry, Tony Harlow, you wanted to...
I was just going to make a point of clarification, Giles, if it's possible, or rather an observation on this. So when you talk about social media platforms, or when you talk about other platforms where there's velocity of activity for artists, they're all part of a massive amount of data that our A&R teams come into discussing. People talk about the industry being... Isn't it simpler now? No, it's more complicated, because we still have traditional, obviously not at the moment, stand at the back of the pub and watch the act. Then we have the social media. Then we have the stream velocity. We have this enormous amount of data that comes in that makes a choice. But the point my A&R team always reinforced to me is, at the end of that time, Jason has that data, David has that data, we have that data. Then we have to make an active choice. Is this a Warner Music artist? Is this someone we want to work in? Do we believe in it? Do we think that the balance in that, is the social media balanced correctly with the streams? Does this person have the talent to deliver a hit, 3 hits? That's the traditional A&R process. So all of this data is flooding into us, more and more opportunity. Then the traditional A&R is still there. Discovery, and do we want to sign? And
thanks to the coronavirus pandemic, that method has changed. So you're trawling the internet much more.
A little bit, but sometimes it's a live stream or a performance on the internet. The artists have innovated. We've innovated. This has been a year of incredible innovation in all the platforms. How can we get our artists out to a world when as Mr. Joseph said, they can't go and do the one thing that they do better than anyone else, which is connect with their audience. And we've all had to work.
Thank you for that. I'd just like to move on very quickly, and I'll go to David Joseph with this one. I mean, there's a difference between the US and UK law. I understand that in the UK, if an artist signs copyright away, they can only get it back if the label goes bust or they agree to sell the rights back. In the US, artists have a right to regain the copyright after 35 years, I understand. How many artists in the US would you know from Universal have recaptured their copyrights after 35 years? Mr. Joseph? You are muted.
You're muted, Mr. Joseph.
I'm sorry, I'm just coming off it. I'd like to address the issue of ownership. I can. I don't know that information to hand, but I will provide that to you.
Thank you.
Okay, can you do that in writing?
Grateful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. Kevin Brennan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just clarify something factually? I think it was Tony earlier on about the Momentum Fund, because my understanding of Peter Leatham's answer was that it was only the artist share of unattributed royalties that went into the Momentum Fund rather than the record label's share. Were you saying in your, I think it was you, Tony, earlier, I'm sorry if I got that wrong, that actually, in your case, and I don't know about the other record labels, they actually allow that unattributed income to go into the Momentum Fund. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, Kevin. I'd rather come back to you on the specific detail, but I believe the point that Peter was making is the Momentum Fund is drawn from unallocated.
Yeah, okay. I think we got that, Tony. Okay, I don't think we need to go over it again, Tony, but could we clarify that perhaps in writing after the meeting, just as a factual thing, so we get the facts correct on that? Appreciate that. And from the other labels, if that's possible, please. There was a discussion earlier on about whether, with Steve Bryan's questioning, whether a stream constitutes a sale or whether it's something different, and the making available right was talked about. I mean, isn't it the truth that actually it's a hybrid that isn't really adequately covered by current copyright regulation, in the sense that if I put on an album on Spotify, which I frequently do, one of my great frustrations is at the end of that album, it'll carry on playing something I haven't asked it to play. And although you can say I've got a choice to switch it off, I could also switch my radio off. But at that point, it's playing out to me like a radio, a playlist I haven't chosen, but it's chosen for me by an algorithm. I mean, Jason, isn't there? I understand why you want to talk about it making available right, because currently that works well, for you as a record label. But isn't the truth that this is a new thing and it needs a new definition in law, Jason?
I just feel, Kevin, that the subscription is providing, the streaming service are providing a much bigger opportunity for more artists than ever before. I
do accept that, and it's a wonderful thing, and I accept it's a marvelous, technological achievement. But at the end of the day, when we talk, if I turn the radio on, then there's going to be equitable remuneration paid to artists involved in those recordings. If I turn on what effectively is Spotify radio, it's even called Spotify radio, there isn't. And the truth is, it's something different, isn't it?
But you still have the opportunity, as you highlighted yourself, that you can choose to listen to that track, you can skip that track, you can listen to them.
I could skip to another radio station as well, couldn't I? But it's absolutely not. Anyway, I don't want to pursue that too far, but I just want to make that point. And if you wanted to make further points about that in writing to the committee, then I think that would be potentially useful. What I did want to do is talk about some things that were talked about in earlier sessions about the nature of record deals and how they work these days. And David Joseph mentioned earlier on about the sort of percentage royalty people might get in a standard type of record deal. In the economics of streaming, if an artist signed, and I've given an example, I listened to what David said and some others said earlier on about the sorts of figures that might be involved. If someone signed a sort of standard record deal with an advance of, say, £300,000, and there were additional costs on top of that of let's say, £250,000, it doesn't sound unreasonable from what David was talking about earlier on and some of the others. Mm-hmm. And they got, let's say, a fairly generous 24% deal. You said it was somewhere between 20 and 25 normally for new artists these days, David. How many streams would the artist have to achieve in order to earn £1 in net profit, would you estimate? David, do you want to have a go at that?
I'm not a mathematician, so I'm very happy to do two things, which is one, because I can't actually, I've got very good people around me who can add up like that. I will provide you that information.
Okay. Before you do, David, I just want to press this point a little bit, if you'd excuse me. Jason, would you have an estimate? That was a £300,000 advance and about £250,000 of other costs.
Okay, so if you were to look at an artist having 10 million streams, that's roughly £50,000 worth of revenue, and then taking the royalty of 20% for the sake of easiest maths, that would be £2,000. I would have to get a calculator out as well, but if you look at that as a rough estimate.
And Tony, what would you say to that?
Well, similar with the mental math logistics, but we would probably say that 1 million streams is worth it of £4,000 to £5,000 in revenue, and that would deliver on that same 20% metric £1,000 to the artist.
Go ahead. Sorry, Tony.
To add, Kevin, the number of artists reaching those levels is changing quite considerably. So in 2016, 582 Warner UK artists did 1 million streams, 8 did 1 billion. In 2020, 1,739 Warner artists do 1 million, 35 do 1 billion plus. Those billion plus candidates would all be recouping that deal, I would think. 4 of our acts did 10 billion streams plus.
Okay.
Those artists are going to be earning multiple millions.
So there's a very handy little. I'm pretty good at maths, actually. I did get a grade A in my O level, which is equivalent to a PhD. I understand these days, according to Michael Gove et al. And but there is a handy app online, which I don't know if you've ever seen it, called DealSim Creatos, which is, as you said, there's lots of handy things for artists these days, so that they're not, signing into deals in complete ignorance or under any pressure they might have been in days gone by. And if you put in that deal into that app with 300,000, it's in dollars on this because it's an American, but $300,000 artist advance and £250,000 in the other costs, recording costs, etc., and other marketing costs that might be recoupable. It says that for the artist to earn $1, and if you put in pounds, £1, they would have to achieve 458.3 million streams to earn £1 in net profit out of the deal. Now, obviously, I'm asking you to comment on an app you haven't looked at or had your experts go over, but does that sound totally wrong, or is that about right, Jason?
It's not. It's definitely not a figure that I'm aware of, Kevin. But Kevin, can I just talk about your deal model? It's important. Your deal model that you're discussing, the artist has the choice to take the £300,000 and have the £250,000, and they have the equal choice to go to a distribution platform and take. But
if they want to sign with a major label, this is the kind of deal they've got to do. And the £300,000 advance, although it sounds like a lot of money, it might be shared amongst a group of artists, and you are buying, are you not, for that? And they've got to repay it. It's got to be recouped. And you are buying for that, are you not? Yeah. The life, if I can finish, Tony, if they are buying it, are you not, the life of the copyright, which lasts how long, Jason?
Okay. To that point, and this is one of the points that I saw in one of the earlier sessions, the idea that 3 major record companies are putting down on a table 3 exact similar deals of a take it or leave it for an artist feels like something from over 50 years ago. That is not true. The modern deals are all different. I do license, again, it's competitive information, but I do license deals, I do distribution deals, I do life of copyright deals. There's different things that are important to different artists. One artist might want a huge, large advance and be prepared to give the life of copyright. Another one will choose to take lesser, more royalties and prefer to do a license. Every deal is different. And the idea that it's literally sign here, take it or leave it, isn't the case, Kevin.
So when artists tell us that basically the standard record deal is pretty much what you'll be expected if you sign with a major record label to go into, you're saying no, there's all sorts of other options on the table that are as easily available to them. They have an absolute choice. And is that the same across all the three major record labels? Jason, you've made your point. Tony?
Yes, absolutely. I think we offer everything from DIY. We have a DIY platform through distribution deals. There are all sorts of different deals within the traditional deal because there are label deals, joint ventures, development deals. There's such a wide choice. So that was the first point I was just going to pick you up on, Kevin. The other one is the idea that advances are repayable. They are not repayable. They're investments, and we give them to artists based on this knowledgeable, informed basis that an artist can make a choice on, whether it's...
But they are recoupable, Tony, aren't they?
They are recoupable. They're not repayable. They don't bear any interest. And if they fail to recoup, then we take the cost of that and the risk of that.
And David, so and the impact of that, David, is it not? I mean, going back to my example of 458.3 million streams being necessary to make a net profit of £1 from streaming, because we are looking at the economics of streaming here in this inquiry. The same app tells me that the total label profit, if 400, and this includes, obviously the advance, et cetera, it is a net profit. The total label net profit, if 458.3 million streams is achieved, is not £1, but £1.19 million. Does that sound about right to you, David?
No, and I'm sure you'll understand it's difficult for me to no, the numbers, no. For us, it's about 1 million streams, is about £5,000 in terms of those streams. That's the artist royalty. But obviously, I can't comment on something I haven't seen. I would like to say something, Mr. Brennan, which is, and I want to speak on behalf of our teams. We are the principal supporters and finders of our artists at the first point of their career. And I would like to say, of these sums of recoupment, that goes on to tour support, that goes on touring, etc. So I don't recognise the figure you said, but if you were an artist on the deal you've talked about, £300,000 advance, £250 on A&R, I'd pretty much tell you they'll probably get a publishing deal of around.
Okay, I accept, David. That there are other things involved, and we'll explore publishing and so on separately.
I hope so, but please understand we're taking. And I'm sorry to interrupt this because this is so important to me. Our artists and the people that I work with, I cannot tell you how important it is that we understand this.
I understand that, but all I'm trying to do
100% of the risk, and they'll get money from merchandise, they'll get money from publishing, they'll get money from live, they get money from broadcast income, and they deserve it all. But I say,
and you've made that point. Order. Okay, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. And you've made that point, David, and there's plenty of opportunities to make that point. I'm just trying to simply understand how that deal would work. And my point is this: is that according to this tool, which is put together to help artists to take the decisions, which we're talking about, it says that in that instance of that kind of deal, they'd have to have 458.3 million streams to make £1 in profit. That the record label's net profit on that would be £1.191,674. Now, I'm not expecting you to be able to actually confirm that now, but you can look at it later and say and challenge it. And by all means, we as a committee will accept that evidence. But if that were true, wouldn't that be the economics of music streaming in a nutshell? That by the time the artist earns £1 in net profit from the deal, the record label earns over £1 million in net profit? Or is that totally unfair? Tony, you look like you're wanting to respond.
Kevin, it's difficult to comment on the specific numbers. I'm not sure when they talk about the label in that situation, whether they're allowing for what we provide for that and the huge infrastructure that involves in being in 70 countries, which we all are. But the real specific point is the advance is an upfront payment. It's an interest-free investment in that artist, and they've had that money already. So when you talk about the £1, they've already taken out. They are actually the recoupment is returning the upfront investment in the artist. So
but just remind us, Tony, what you're getting for that advance is the life term of the copyright, isn't it? How long does that last?
The lifetime of copyright will depend on which market you're in.
If you are given an advance in the UK to an artist,
I think
£300,000. How long is the copyright you're buying out with that advance? How long does that last?
50 years.
Yeah. So so that's the artist from their point of view. They're giving you something that will last over 50 years. That's simply the point I'm making. It isn't just a one-off payment to blow down the pub, is it?
David has made the point that we are mutual investors together in a career, which often is starting from almost nothing and building up over time. We make an upfront payment, and that's what you're talking about when you talk about recoupment. That's not repayable, and that's interest free, and it's by nature of an investment. We continue to hold the stake in the investment.
Thank you, Chair. And Jason, I think I should probably just give you a quick opportunity, but just to say what you wanted to say.
Very briefly, Kevin, you're also assuming that an artist wants to recoup. Many artists are not interested in recouping.
All right, I haven't got time to explore that now, but I'll take the point.
Okay, thank you.
Back to you, Chair.